My name is Joe McGivern, and I chair the Holyoke City Council's Finance Committee. Members of the committee present are to my right, Peter Tallman, to my left, Mike Sullivan, and to his left, David Bartley. We will be joined by our fifth member, I believe by Zoom shortly, who is Jim Leahy. Other counselors is our mayor, Councilor Terrence Murphy, sitting at his desk behind me. And at the moment, those are the members of the City Council who are present. We have a number of invited guests in the good August agenda, which our goal is this evening is to get the agenda completed and reported to the full City Council tomorrow evening. It must be said that we are being televised on the Access Channel live, we are being streamed live, and we have Zoom access, which those numbers are available through the city website and through any published agenda that was previously put out. This meeting is being taped, and with that in mind, the meeting is called to order, and I will ask that we go to item number 1.
Motion to take item number 1 off the table for discussion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to take item number 1 off the table for discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. This is an order that in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, the City Council accepts the provisions of the Holyoke Safe Streets and Path Project. Total amount is $73,100. There is no match to this grant, and we are being asked to authorize the establishment of a fund or other method appropriate for the account of the receipts and expenditures of all resources associated with said grant. We have our city engineer present with us this evening. Bob, if you can raise your hand, they'll check you in and you'll be able to make a presentation.
Am I good?
You're good and welcome.
Okay, great. Okay. I'll keep it brief because this is a pretty simple one. As you indicated, Joe, there's no match involved in this grant. I'll also say there's no risk. The funds for this grant were actually deposited in the city accounts earlier last week, I believe. So Mass DOT actually prepays the grant amount as opposed to the city have to putting in a reimbursement request. And they did that entirely on their own. We had no involvement on just the way they work in this type of grant is they move the funds very quickly. What this project is all about is putting in what's known as rapid flashing beacons, the pedestrian flashing beacons that you hit to call attention to a crosswalk before you walk across the crosswalk at 5 locations. 2 locations near the senior center that we worked with Nave on to identify those locations, 2 locations at the Dean's School, at the same locations that the City Council has previously approved funding for a raised crosswalk. So the timing of this is very good because we can incorporate the rapid flashing beacons in the raised crosswalk design. 2 locations at McMahon School, at Kane, and at Pinchon where there are existing crosswalks, and 2 locations at Mayor Field, and like Dean's School, that's a location where the City Council has already appropriated funds to construct raised crosswalks, so we'll incorporate the rapid flashing beacons into the raised crosswalk design. And then there's 1 location in front of Springdale Park at Springdale Street where there's no traffic signal at that location in a crosswalk, so we're looking to try to make that crosswalk safer by putting in the pedestrian beacons. There is a relatively short time frame that we talked about previously. We are supposed to have the work fully completed by December 31st. If the City Council, if the Finance Committee recommends acceptance of the grant and the City Council accepts the grant tomorrow evening, we will then go ahead immediately and start the procurement process for the equipment, which is our concern regarding the lead time on that equipment. But we do believe we've done one of these now with Mass DOT. We're comfortable that one way or the other, we will do what it takes to keep Mass DOT happy, and there won't be any problems with the funds that they've already provided to the city.
Thank you, Bob. And as always, a very thorough and concise presentation. I fully understand what you're saying about the reimbursement and the fact that this money is placed in the city's coffers and up front, and there's I wouldn't say no risk. One risk that you still face, or the city still faces, not you personally, is overcharging the grant itself. Inadvertently, by mistake, in the past, some invoices have been charged to the wrong grant, and only the auditor, outside auditor, picked up on that in the long run. Now, that's unusual, and I don't anticipate it with you or with the DPW department, but it can happen. Yeah, being a big fan of raised crosswalks, I think this is a fantastic way, and I'm noticing that these priorities are high priorities for the city council, especially the ones on Homestead and Mayor Field. Springdale Park, we all know, with the mayor sitting behind me, the speed issues on Main Street, and anything for public safety where pedestrians cross is always important. I would open up this to questions from members of the committee. Are there any questions or any thoughts? Councilor Tallman.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bob, for sharing this with us, the information, and concisely. And thanks for the packet. I know we had this a couple weeks ago, but it's good to see the areas and the sidewalks that are going to be done with the beacons. And of course, it's really important to have the safety issue out there for our residents. The time frame you mentioned about the ordering the parts and equipment. How long will that take approximately, and will you be able to get started on this right away?
We will be able to get going with the procurement right away. The supplier of these beacons are on the state bid list, so we can go directly to a purchase. We don't have to go through an extensive procurement process because the cost of the beacons are already known, and again, the vendor's pre-approved on the state list. But we're still looking probably at least a 12-week lead time, if not more. One strategy that we've talked about internally is installing the concrete bases for the rapid flashing beacons, doing them sooner such that when the beacons come in, if they come in December, it's feasible to install the steel posts on top of the concrete bases that are already installed, but we don't really want to be installing concrete bases in December or the end of December. So we may try to get a head start on that in terms of installing what we can now and making it possible to install the above ground equipment whenever it's received.
And the walks, you stated that you're going to try to coordinate the raised sidewalks in the certain areas, or raised crosswalks with the beacons?
That's correct. There's two locations, the Dean School and Mayor Field, where there are two raised crosswalks being installed. That project is being designed right now and will likely be submitted to the purchasing department by the end of this week to get it out to bid. And our design incorporates the installation of these rapid flashing beacons in that design.
Okay, and who is, do you have a contractor or something? You put that out to bid to, who's going to be doing the work on the project? On
the raised crosswalk, because of the value of that has to be put out to competitive bid, so we don't know who that contractor will be at this moment.
But the beacons, the foundations, that can be done by the city, or?
Similar
Concrete.
to the work that Joe O'Connor and the Signal Division, the great work that he's done over the past couple of years. We'll be working with Joe for the installation of the bases and the signals. This grant amount is for the equipment itself.
Okay.
And the labor will be done by the city teamed up with Joe.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Murphy?
What's your mic? Want to get another one, or?
Scott, can you hear Mayor Murphy?
Horrible as that is, oh, God. Comes the cavalry.
You'll be able to hear him.
Like Joe Biden over here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Bob, if I'm not mistaken, I think some of these will be near the senior center, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and I thank you for that. I do know that on Beach Street and on Pine and Sargent Street there have been concerns. So I think hopefully these will make people more alert to the fact that there are people coming across the street, number one, and obviously realizing they're not going to go sprinting across for them. So I know this was something that came up, I'm going to say 24 months ago when I first met up at the Council on Aging. So I do appreciate this. I think all of the areas make a lot of sense. One possible change I might make would be if you do Springdale, but you do Papineau instead of Springdale Avenue for this reason. A lot of times the people that park and go across the street to the park are parking over by the parking lot on the 75-foot diamond and then running across. And that's usually kids. So, I mean, that's just a thought. I know Springdale Avenue is also pretty busy and there's a lot of driving that goes by there fast, but I think in terms of pedestrians crossing, you might find more at Papineau. Just a suggestion. Thank you, though, and I appreciate all your work.
Is there any further discussion?
Motion to recommend approval.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded to recommend approval to the full city council tomorrow evening. All those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? So moved. Bob, thank you, and we appreciate it. And I personally appreciate it because if I hadn't known this, been able to have read this first and known it was for raised sidewalks, I would not have made the motion to put it in committee. But thank you for your hard work.
Motion
You're
to take
welcome.
it off the table.
Motion made and seconded to take up item number 2. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. This is a contract submitted, actually negotiated by former Mayor Alex Morse through the help of the Law Department and submitted to the full City Council on July 16th of 2021. A little background on what is happening here. The full contract with the Chief of Police and similar with the Chief of the Fire Department is a contract to determine a length of period of which a mayor's appointment, and only a mayor can appoint the chief of police, the length of employment for that particular individual. But it also includes the negotiations of the monetary agreement towards salary and any perks connected to the city budget itself. The city council has no say over the mayor's appointment of chief of police, no say over the mayor's appointment chief of the fire department, but the city council does have a say over the budget. Now, quite frankly, we recently voted on the budget, which is coincidental to the beginning of this contract, which is today, I believe, or this week, whichever is the beginning of the work week in Holyoke, I'm not sure. And that's okay, because the first pay period is a couple of weeks away. But the contract is before us, so if the city council, members of this committee, have any questions about the monetary impacts that are associated with this contract, we certainly can discuss that, and we certainly can take action on that. I believe we have from the Law Department our city solicitor assigned to us, Attorney Jenna Welloff. Well, sorry, Jenna. I always say it wrong. I'm going to get it down. And I believe from the police department we should have our new chief. Is that correct?
That's correct, Joe. I'm here.
Chief, welcome and congratulations. Your career has already preceded you, but your beginning of this new part of your career was greatly appreciated by many of us. Chief, if you heard what I said, Jenna's just going to walk through the contract. You're welcome to say anything you want, and then basically it's just questions and answers, and we'll get this to the full city council tomorrow night. We cannot change the appointment of the mayor. That's not what this is about. This is the finance committee. It's just about the salary and the impact on the budget, so we have a say in that. Jenna, did you want to go first? Did you want to? And I know I have to point out that Alex Morse was the mayor when this was negotiated. Jenna, I'm not too sure. Did you negotiate the contract or someone else in the law department?
I did not negotiate the contract.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to add? And thank you for being here this evening to help answer any questions, legal questions.
Of course, I don't think there's really anything I have to add. The questions that I had addressed in the legal opinion, I think speak for themselves, just that it's the power of appointment was exclusively with the mayor. This is an executed and signed contract, so city council's involvement with that portion of the contract. There's really no involvement from that aspect from city council, as it is signed and executed, and it's talking about things that the ordinance already addresses, and the ordinance is clear that the mayor has a power of appointment, and it's vested in the mayor exclusively to make the appointment of the chief of police.
But again, we are not questioning the power of appointment. It's a negotiated contract, like all contracts are negotiated when they come before us, but they are subject to appropriation as far as the impact on the budget. And I did talk to the city solicitor today about that, and I know the Department of Revenue backs that up for us. But with that in mind.
No,
Go
I
ahead,
was just
I'm
going to
sorry.
say, I understand what you're saying. I was just reiterating what the questions were asked of me and why the legal opinion was submitted as it was submitted.
I apologize. I understand that. Yes, I understand. There are other questions out there, but this is the Finance Committee, and that's what we're focusing on, is the money impact. Chief, did you want to add anything? I know it's been a while since this contract was negotiated, but again, welcome.
No, I'm good to answer any questions you might have. Yeah, it was negotiated a while ago. Yesterday was my first day officially. Today was kind of my first official work day, and I'm ready to go, whatever you need.
And you're still with us. I like that.
So far, so good.
So far, there you go.
Mayor Murphy, I know you did not negotiate this contract either, but is there anything from the mayor's office you wanted to add?
No, the contract is before me. I've had it. I've met with Captain Pratt a number of times, and we have regular meetings, and we intend to continue to have those. He has worked with me and gotten me information that I've wanted, and I expect that'll continue. And I honor the contract that was signed. And this doesn't reflect on Chief Pratt. Would I have thought that a mayor that was thinking about resigning shouldn't have done this? I would have thought he shouldn't, but that's a moot point right now. Chief Pratt is on the job, he's doing the job, and I'm going to work with him for the next 3 months plus, and I know he's going to work with me, and we're going to cooperate and try to make good progress.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. To the members of the committee, is there any way you wish to proceed? I suggest that Article 11 of this contract is where the financial impacts are. Although I made some statements, that doesn't mean that anybody here is welcome to have any questions about the contract and welcome to approach this in any way you see fit. The chair will entertain any questions or any thoughts.
Well, I'll ask it.
Mr. Barley?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Joe, through the chair. Chief, congratulations, well done, well deserved. Chief, did you get a copy of the legal opinion signed by Lisa Ball and Jenna?
Oh, I did not.
Okay, just through the chair to Jenna. Jenna, would you forward that legal opinion to the chief of police, please?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. All right. So, Chief, I don't really. Let me just think for a second. I don't want to say anything incorrect. Yeah, Chief, I don't think we're gonna get too much into a legal opinion, only because you haven't read it and you haven't had the courtesy of a chance to review. But I am going to ask the one question about residency. Chief, where are you residing now?
I currently live in South Hadley.
Okay, and it's your intention to move to the city within the next 12 months?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
Chief, the salary in the contract, base salary is $147,000, and then it works in other caveats, which I think are fairly understandable. One question I have is, as a captain working overtime, you certainly made made a little bit more money than this at times, and I'm not singling you out, but let's put it a different way, the opportunity was there. Is this contract going to satisfy your financial needs for 3 years, enough to keep you as our chief?
Yes.
And I do have one question, and I understand that negotiations are negotiations, but there's a $150 an hour rate if you work St. Patrick's Day Parade. Can you just explain that?
Yeah, it's a benefit that all members here receive. It was a benefit I received as a captain. It was negotiated into the chief's contract as well.
Well, said and answered. I guess I didn't know that was part of the superior officer's contract, but that's fine. If it's in there, I can see why you had asked to put it in here. There's also longevity. It looks like the same longevity as the superior officers.
Correct.
And is there anything in here, I'm trying to be a devil's advocate for tomorrow night when the city councilors who are not here all of a sudden come up with questions. Is there anything that you wish to point out that we should know good, in terms of what you negotiated for tomorrow night?
No, I would just say that basically all the benefits that are there are all the benefits that I've earned over 28, going on 29 years. And I just simply rolled them into the chief's contract.
Thank you. Any other questions? Are we joined by any other city councilors yet? Okay. Councilor Bacon has joined us by Zoom. And if Councilor Bacon has any questions or any others of the members of the committee.
I'm all set, thank you.
Thank you. Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
Must have received the contract?
Motion made and second to receive and with a recommendation for tomorrow night.
Well, what are we recommending?
Whether we're approving the monetary impact on the budget.
No. I just made a motion received, that's all I did. And I seconded Pete's motion.
Chair, under discussion, I realize the legal opinion states one thing. I did talk to the city solicitor today, and I think she agreed with my reasonings. I'm not going to speak for her as to what she may say tomorrow night or what may be said tomorrow night, but subject to appropriation is our duty as counselors. And this contract was negotiated, as we stated, long before Terry Murphy took over, and should have been given to us before the budget hearings, same as the item number 3, which is coming up next. And it does have an impact. When we first started going to contracts, our mayor was Mayor Dunn, who wanted to go to that 3-year contract, and at that time, the salaries were, for the chief, because they were not part of the union, were done by ordinance. So we agreed to this as long as the city council had approval of the monetary impact of the contract. So if the committee doesn't want to make a recommendation, the chair will. Councilor Bacon?
Can you just let us know what the financial impact is, what the difference is?
I can to the best of my ability. I tried to do that because everybody here did not negotiate this contract because it's close to, I believe, about 5 months old, Mayor Murphy. But it's, the base is 147. Other, which are essentially everything else that's worked into this contract, monetary-wise, is most of what you see in the superior officer's contract, which includes the
Right.
Quinn bill, which includes longevity, which includes the caveats, as I pointed out, the one I missed somewhere over the years about St. Patrick's Day, holidays, all those bonuses are, I mean, not bonuses, all those perks are, look like they're normal in terms of vacation days is 35 annual days.
Right, so do we not have enough in the salary line? Is that the issue?
To my knowledge, I would defer that to the auditor. To my knowledge, the current rate for Chief, the retired, now retired Chief Febo is similar to this contract. This one might be a little bit higher, but it is similar, and, you know, that, the money for the first 6+ months of the year in the line item that pays for the chief, paid for Chief Feeble's salary. And the balance,
Okay.
I'd have to
No,
defer to
first
the audit
month.
if there's enough to take care of this for the rest of the fiscal year.
Only 1 month for
Oh,
Chief
so-
Ebo, though.
Okay. Thanks.
Councilman McGivern?
Yeah, 1 month.
Only 1 month for Chief Ebo.
I'm sorry, did I say, I didn't mean to say 6, I meant 1.
Okay.
The line item was 6 months, the contract, never mind.
yeah,
Fiscal
It
years,
was
I'm
the same
confusing
sal-
myself. I'm sorry, what was that?
Tanya.
I'm sorry, I said it was the same salary. The 147 was also Chief Febo's salary. So
Okay.
he's
Thank
covered.
you.
Okay.
Welcome.
This is our city auditor, Tanya Dolchek. Any questions for the auditor? Is everybody happy? Motion on the floor is that we just tell the city council we received the city contract. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Item number 3.
Motion to take 3 off the
Motion is
table?
second to take off the table. This is a settlement agreement between the City of Holyoke and the Holyoke Professional Supervisors Association, which is recognized as a collective bargaining unit. On that motion, all those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? So moved. The law department is with us this evening. Jenna, I don't think you negotiated this contract. Mayor Murphy, did you negotiate this one?
I was involved, Attorney Welloff was involved, oh man, I'm Russell and I can't think of his last name, I'm sorry, Attorney, Jenna, help me out there, please.
Dupree, Russell Dupree.
Russell Dupre he's the lead on it. We've been having frequent meetings and the negotiations came to a conclusion just recently, so.
So if I could, I also would like to recognize, is Damian Cody with us?
He is not.
Okay. We, through our administrative assistant, we did reach out to the association itself. Currently, my understanding is Jeff Burkott is the chair who is out of town I'm sorry, who is not present this evening and not working today. But I also recognize that in the past, Damian Cody is a prior chair of the association itself, and neither one of them, usually are here to help us with any questions and answers. I would ask Jenna, if you or Mayor Murphy or both of you could just, what we typically do with a contract is just walk through it, any changes, salary increases. This, I believe, is 2%, but if
Right.
just any changes and Tanya's here to answer any impacts on the budget.
Jenna, I'm going to defer to you.
I do not have the contract in front of me. I have the information regarding the funding of the contract. If you give me a second to try to pull up the contract, but I don't have that in front of me. I wasn't aware that you were going to need me to go through line by line the contract tonight.
Tanya, while we're waiting for Jenna, can you just walk us through the line items? There's a number of different individuals that have an impact. We had some discussion during the budget hearings, but this contract was, by the full city council, referred to this committee. Is there money in the budget to pay these increases, to your knowledge?
So yes, there's money in the budget to pay for the 2% raise. Also, they added a couple positions on here which are also funded, except for the National Service Officer, who is new to this agreement. That was the only thing that I saw today that I had questions.
I saw that too, and is there going to be an ordinance proposed to go along with this position?
I'm really not sure of the legal, Jenna would have to answer that for you. I believe the legal department does the ordinances.
Mayor
I
Murphy?
do see that it was added into, go ahead.
Okay,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. This hybrid is sometimes difficult. But if I could ask Mayor Murphy about the new position in the contract?
Nothing has been requested as far as an ordinance as of yet.
Okay, but when a mayor in a collective bargaining unit creates a position, you know, typically it is followed up by the creation of, if required, the creation of an ordinance before that position becomes available. Jenna, do you have your numbers with you?
I'm having technical difficulties with my computer to get the numbers up. I believe that there was a 2% raise. I don't know if that was across the board for everyone or if there were varying raises, so I don't want to speak as to specifics. As I stated, I am filling in tonight, so I wasn't aware that I was going to have to go line by line. But what I can say is, talking in regards to the legal opinion regarding approval of the contracts per the ordinance and the funding for it. As to go specifically what the contract is going through each line item, I can't, with specificity, go through that tonight.
Tanya,
I have the contract.
are any of these increases being paid yet?
No, these
No.
increases. Yeah.
Okay, so we're hoping to get through this tonight and hoping the city council can vote on it tomorrow, so each of these individuals can receive their increase.
Correct.
The contract is a 2%, looks like, Jenna, across the board, cost of living increase, which I don't think anybody is gonna question in this day and age, other than knowing that it's there. Mayor Murphy, did you wanna say something?
No, the 2% is accurate. We tried to make it across the board. There weren't a lot of other adjustments, if you will, to the contract. I'm pretty positive it's it will end in FY '22, so that the incoming mayor will be able to negotiate for future years.
Now, there's 3 things under Exhibit A. Besides the creation of the National Service Office, there's add the position Chief of Office Official of Wires, which I believe we discussed in the past at a grade 10, and move the Assistant Building Commissioner from grade 9 to grade 10 due to additional responsibilities. Can someone tell us the additional responsibilities for the Assistant Building Commissioner?
I cannot. I can tell you during the negotiations, and I was not involved in the actual day-to-day negotiations, but I know they were arguing that the position had done it, and I know our attorney, after hearing that, came to the conclusion that they were correct.
Is there any other comments from anyone who's here to present this contract to us? Chair will make a motion to lay it on the table.
I think Linda.
A second?
I'm sorry.
Linda got her hand up.
Jenna?
No, Linda.
Counselor Bacon?
Oh, that's okay, Mr. Chairman. If you're tabling it, I'm okay with that. I just think there's a lot of things that have to happen before it can be acted on.
I agree. Counselor Barley?
Just before we table it, just a point of order, if I may. And just through the chair to Attorney Wellhoff. Jenna? You there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This has been just my own question. The Holyoke Professional Supervisors Association, is that a duly recognized collective bargaining unit pursuant to state law? Is that something that we can, I don't understand what they are exactly. So for example, we know that 1693 is the firefighters and we of course we know the supervisors union and the patrolmen's union. We're aware that they have national affiliations, and for the Holyoke Supervisors bargaining group, what are they affiliated with, and how are they deemed? Are they actually a union? Is it with collective bargaining rights? Are you able to explain that to us either tonight or at some future time?
I think at a future time, I can get more information regarding it. My understanding is that they are recognized, but without looking into it further, I would wait until I have a more detailed explanation for you.
That's very fair. And then, because it's on point here, so I don't think I'm going off on a tangent. So, and then just for the summary here for the settlement agreement, I'm looking through my computer, and for some reason I cannot find the actual, so this references several articles and sections, and I for some reason don't have the actual overriding agreement. And I'm just wondering if that's something that you'd be, or somebody could send that to Jeff, and maybe Jeff could, I'm probably not the only counselor, and if I am, I apologize, but I assume other counselors probably want the actual agreement, which I can't seem to find on my computer. And is that something that you're able to forward to Jeff so he can disseminate?
It's not something I'll be able to forward tonight. I'm going to have to speak with Attorney Ball. Like I said, I'm filling in, so I'm trying to find the relevant documents that you're referencing, but I don't want to send you the wrong information or the wrong documents. So once I am in receipt of it and speak to Attorney Ball, I can go ahead and forward it if that's fine.
Oh, well, it looks like this is probably going to be tabled, so there's no rush. So I wasn't expecting it tonight, but it's kind of you to offer. But I no, that's okay. And so that's it. I just want to get some clarification what the legal status is of the Supervisors Association, and then I was hopeful to just get a copy sent to me of the actual agreement that we're amending. Thank you.
Sir? That's, what we have, I think, Jenna, is more of an MOU. I think Counselor Bartley is looking for the entire agreement.
Yeah,
Is
the
that-
original one.
No, I have that.
You have that, yeah.
I have that in my computer. That was sent to us by Jeff. I'm
Yeah.
just looking for the actual agreement.
Yeah.
So this
Refers-
settlement agreement is amending the, what's referenced in here as a collective bargaining agreement. But I'm not sure how this association does collective bargaining. I just want to understand how they're recognized under law as a bargaining unit.
Just note that all parties were, through our administrative assistant, informed of this meeting and invited, and it's okay. We just have questions we need answered, and by laying it on the table, it'll give us a chance for, to get another finance committee meeting before the next full city council meeting after tomorrow. So if there's no further discussion, I believe there's a second to lay on the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's laid on the table. We could entertain a motion to take item number 4 and 5 as a package.
Motion to take, suspend the rules and take items number 4 and 5 off the table for discussion.
Motion made second to suspend the rules to take up 2 items at the same time, being item 4 and item 5. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. I'll read them quickly. Item 4 is a bond request. Bond request is subject to appropriations, therefore the city council traditionally and historically refers it to this finance committee for the purpose of talking about the bond. This would be the order that the sum of $856,750 is appropriate to pay the cost of the building demolition for the following City of Holyoke properties. There's a number of properties which begins with 345 Dwight Street, 84 Newton Street, 144 High Street, 106 Pine Street, 246 Lyman Street, and the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow said amount under pursuant to the Chapter 44 Mass General Laws, Section 7-1 of the General Laws, or pursuant to any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the city therefore. The mayor is authorized to contract and expend any state aid available for the project, and the mayor is authorized to take any action necessary or convenient to carry out the said project. It's also further ordered that any premium received by the city upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this vote leaves less such premium applied to the payment of the cost of issuance of such bonds or notes may be applied to the payment of the cost approved by the vote in accordance with that same Mass General Law 44, Section 20. laws thereby reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed. This is often done during the course of the year for all the debt that we have out there as a city. The treasurer is also authorized to file an application to qualify under Mass General Laws 44A for any or all of the bond notes authorized to be issued pursuant to the order, and that this order reduce the interest cost. The city treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to refinance the bonds issued pursuant to the order at any time they can reduce the interest being paid. With that said, we have an attachment, and we have Mayor Murphy here, who's also a city councilor who is very much been working very hard on the safe building, which in a minute I'm going to ask Mayor Murphy to explain the status of the committee and a new name for the committee that has dealt with this for decades in the city of Holyoke. But item number 5 first is a letter that we received at the full city council meeting on June 15th and addressed to the full city council and signed off by the chair, Richard Alstrom. Other members of the council are listed here, and I believe it was a vote of the Historic Commission to bring it to our attention of their concerns about the demolition of property. As I stated, this, or maybe I didn't state it clearly, this, like any appropriation, comes under the name of the chair of the finance in replacement of the mayor. Unfortunately, we don't have the proper procedure for a mayor to file something that can be voted upon, final vote upon by the city council. So for years, that's the way we've done this. And again, this evening, we're here to talk about bonding and borrowing. But the Historic Commission's letter pursuant to the, at that time was our agenda item 33, the Historic Commission being established in 1972 by the city to preserve and develop historical and archaeological assets of the city. As a commission, we are concerned that the city council is moving forward with the proposal for many reasons. And then it lists a number of different reasons, which if it's okay with the committee, I think it's best in a moment that we hear from a voice from the Historic Commission to walk us through their concerns. But in fairness, to get everybody on the same page, I would suggest to the committee that we ask Mayor Murphy to walk us through, not so much the request for bonding, but for how the money's borrowed and how the appropriation would be used. Is that okay with members of the committee?
Yep. Agreed upon, yep.
Okay. Mayor Murphy, if you could walk us through.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been working with and I still call them the Problem Property Group, but I think they have a different name, and it's not going to come to me right now, but it will. In terms of, since I've been back on the council in 2019, in terms of reviewing what our situation is, I've worked with the fire department in terms of Red X buildings and the dangers that are there. I've had people in the neighborhoods talk to me, why do we have these buildings that are just sitting there and with red X's telling me they're dangerous and next to vacant lots. So what I've done, and the properties that were on this bond were the 5, I've asked for the Problem Property Group to tell me the 5 to 7 buildings that were in the worst shape and probably in need of demolition. Those 5 plus 2 others were listed. A couple of things I want to emphasize, and I've actually filed something for tomorrow night's meeting because I am not opposed to renovation. I am not opposed to historical preservation, but if we're going to do it, we need to do it a lot quicker. I'm just going to read a few of the dates since some of these buildings. 1996, it's been on a Problem Property Group since 1996. 2004, 2002, 1998, 2006, 2007, 1996, 1995. We can't keep waiting 20 years and have boarded up buildings and red X's on buildings and then expect that we're going to be in a position to renovate and preserve. What my suggestion is, as soon as a building gets in front of the Problem Property Group, that at that time, it should be presented to the Historical Commission so that they have an opportunity then where they would have much more time to start looking into what the options, both for options for renovation or restoration and also options for where the money's going to come to do that. And I just, at this point, and I want to make a couple other points, and I have the utmost respect for people trying to preserve things, so let me make that very clear. But I do think City Council and the mayor have an obligation to make sure that neighborhoods are safe. And when we have buildings that are collapsing, when we have buildings that are boarded up and with vacant lots right next to them, and have been that way for 15, 20 years, I think we have an obligation to act. I will say 2 of the buildings that are on that list, 246 Lyman Street, is in fact going to be demolished by One Holyoke. That's coming, and my expectation is that's going to happen within the next 2 weeks. The process is going to begin. And we now have proposals out for 345 Dwight Street, which has been just since 2006 has had a California owner pretty much allowing the building to fall. So if nothing else, putting them in the spotlight seems to have gotten some action, someone looking at making a proposal. So the other properties came from Mr. Cody as buildings that should be coming down. And I've asked, since these other 2 properties would no longer be in need of this right away, that they submit other buildings that they feel are in need of action, either demolition or restoration. So, one last thing, I think city councilors have an obligation not to just sit back. I know one of the comments in the letter was the city council should not be taking the lead on which buildings should be destroyed and removed from our historic inventory. I'm not saying the city council's taking the lead. I'm saying the city council and this mayor tried to work with the building committee to find out what we need to move, what we need to remove, in the hope of both making the neighborhood safer, but also in the hopes of providing some reinvestment into the neighborhoods. And one of the things I've heard since I've been in the mayor's office is, and I'm hoping, hearing it a little less, is that, you got to invest in my neighborhood for me to think that you really care about my neighborhood. And and these boarded up buildings are a part of that negative image. So I'll stop right there, Mr. President.
And before we open this up to hear from the Historic Commission, I'd just like to highlight a couple things. Our auditor is with us. Is the city treasurer with us? No, it'd be Kate Chakowski. We reached out because I know with some pre-conversation myself that our bonding counselor, Cinda McNary, who works for Hilltop Securities, has a list of, and provided us with a list of debt service schedule, and if this fits into our debt service schedule, which, Tanya, if you could just walk us through that, if you have an understanding. I thought Kate Chakowski would be with us this evening, but that's okay. I know you guys work together.
What did you want me to walk through? I'm sorry.
Cinder has
The debt service schedule?
looked at the debt schedule and looked at what is being requested here, and my understanding is with what's online, what's coming offline in the near future, that we're in okay shape as far as debt schedule goes.
So
Debt
the
service,
schedule that
sorry.
I had attached, the schedule that I had attached, the debt service schedule for the $856,000 building demolition, is at a coupon rate of 1.25% for, let's see, is it 10 years, I believe? September 2021 to 32.
That's correct.
1, 3, 4, 5. I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared to even go over this. And it's going to cost us, it's variable, $101,000 for fiscal year 2023, and then it gradually goes down to $85,531 in the last year of 2032. So the debt statement that I provided was from Cinder, and it's just showing us how much debt we have outstanding in our remaining borrowing capacity. So we have a net debt subject to the debt limit of $80,691,895 and a remaining borrowing capacity under the debt limit of $38,294,045, which means that we're paying on the $80 million, but we also have the ability to borrow $38 million more. Is there anything more that you wanted covered?
No, we appreciate you stepping in, and we appreciate you providing us with this information in
problem.
advance.
Attached to this as well is also showing an itemized list of outstanding debt, which is outside the debt limit, which is $29,850,000, which are gas and electric, school projects, sewer, water treatment, and projects like that. And I think really that's what's most important, inside of this packet.
Thank you. And when you say outside, that means that, the gas and electric, sewer, water, water departments, and schools actually, it's not the impact, the schools are a little bit different, but not the direct impact on the general fund itself on the budget, but more by user ratepayers and the budgets supported by the ratepayers, correct?
That's correct. Not the school department is treated a little bit differently,
Right.
but it's outside the realm of the city capital project, so to speak.
Thank you. Is there any questions from the committee so far? Any thoughts? Councilor Bartley?
Just a clarification through the chair to Terry, Acting Mayor Terry Murphy. Terry, just clarify your point for me. You mentioned for 246 Lyman, did you say Holyoke CDC? What are they doing?
They've agreed to take over the property. They're paying for the demolition with long-term plans to do something there. But they were
We're
having a little problem getting it done, but we spoke with them last week, and I've been told that should begin to happen within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, so then what's our pleasure with it being in the bond now? What are we?
Yeah, eventually I'm going to tell you to table it. I'm probably going to come back with another one.
Okay.
But I got those two updates in the last 6 or 7 days.
Terry, I can't imagine how many balls you got in the air, so that's okay. But I just want to get a vibration as to. I just picked up on that, and then, if you would, you'll notice in the aforesaid memo by the historic board, they kind of green lighted.
Yep.
102 properties, including the Lyman one, the Pine Street and the Lyman.
Yep.
So it looks like there's some reasonability there as well. I just want to point that out.
Oh no, they are working with exactly what they've been given. I'm just trying to give, in my opinion, if we can change it so that they get that information in the first year and it's on a problem property group and they can start considering it, they might have 2 or 3 years to be able to work a plan and secure funding to restore historical properties, as opposed to, when you're out there 10, 15 years. I talked to the fire chief, on roof collapses and flooded cellars and being unable to have firefighters go into buildings. I don't know how we're going to get those restored. If we can do it, I'm fine with that. I took what was recommended. I believe we got to move on some of these things, and I think they will help economic revitalization if we can clear out things and then have some reinvestment.
And just so in the interest of time, if your intention is to have us table this, how much of a discussion do you really want us to have at this?
I think the discussion, just if you can, with respect for the historical commission, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm like I said, I've been working with the problem property group, which is now preservation group, I think, or something to that extent, to ask them if there are other buildings. Like I said, I got a report early in 2021, and some of those dates I read are how long we've had them in the problem property group. So. And that's just, in my opinion, that's just way too long.
No, definitely want to hear from the historic group. And then one last, through the chair to the city auditor. Tanya, this is the first time in my 9+ years I've I've ever heard actual numbers coming to us with net debt and with bonding limit in that detail. So I typed as quick as I could, but, you know, while I did get a B+ in typing from Miss McKenna, I'm probably not the greatest. So what I'm hopeful is that you would be gracious enough to just fire off a memo to Jeff, and Jeff could ship it off to the rest of the board, if you would. And it doesn't have to be for tomorrow. It just could be for a future finance meeting, okay? Tanya?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. Jeff?
Yes,
Okay.
that's fine.
All right, thank you.
Could I make one more point, Mr. President?
Mayor Murphy?
Yeah, just, so, you know, I mean, I did speak with, I didn't speak, we communicated via emails with Cinder about this, and without a specific plan to put new facilities, the demolition would be a 10-year bond. If we had a demolition and also had a plan for what was gonna go in to replace it, that could be, it's my understanding, that could go to be a 20 or 30-year bond. But for demolition only, it's 10 years, and that's what she's pretty much put down here. So the actual insurance is only, or the interest is only $58,000 over the 10 years.
Gotcha. And that's why the language of, as you go along, the modifications are within the mayor's purview, the city treasurer's purview accordingly. Counselor Sullivan?
Yeah, through the chair to the mayor. Terry, 345 Dwight Street.
Yep.
Yeah. Have we exercised any kind of take back on that property? I know that one was owned by a California group.
Yep.
Was there a reverter clause in there or anything?
It's not a reverter clause to my knowledge. However, from what I understand, we have begun to move somewhat legally in terms of taking over. And there is supposedly a proposal out there potentially to do some constructive thing there. I don't have any more specifics than that. I actually supposed to have a meeting in about a week when certain people get back, or we can discuss that. But I don't have specifics. I just been told that that the person who owns the building had been paying both the fines and the taxes, and it's my understanding that they are now behind on that, and therefore we are starting to do movement on tax title or some other way, and that there's someone interested in doing it, in renovating. Okay. I don't know if they've actually been in the building.
Okay, and would these buildings or even be subject to the American Recovery Plan funds going forward here instead of bonding?
For demolition?
Yes.
It does not appear, no. Unless you're demolishing to, and then with a specific renovation plan. Or you're replacing it with something. It doesn't, I thought, when it first came out, it appeared demolition was part of it. It now appears, and Alicia's here, so she might be able to address that as well, but as I understand it now, demolition without replacement is not necessarily, unless you're talking from a health standpoint. And obviously this is from a safety standpoint, but whether it qualifies from a health standpoint, I don't know.
Well, I think a couple of them might, not health and safety, and
Yep.
as I read it also, it wasn't worded strictly demolition. I think it was removal of blighted
Yep.
properties was allowable in there. So if we have a moment and Alicia could
Yeah, I mean,
address that, I'd like to hear it.
Good evening, everybody. So we did not find within the interim rule a designation for demolition, except for those areas where the mayor has pointed out. For instance, if you were going to do some selective demolition as part of a housing development, that may be allowed. But demolition for the sake of demolition to address blight does not seem to be in the interim rule at this point. We certainly could take another look. We do have 100,000, I just looked, we do have 100,000 in CDBG that's been allocated for FY 2021 for demolition. We also think we might have some demolition money left over. We're waiting for the final invoices to come in for one of the demolitions that we did do this year, 588 High Street. But we can certainly take another look at ARPA.
Thank you, Alicia. And Councilor Tomlin.
Yeah, thank you. And Councilor Barley had addressed a couple of my concerns about the bonding, and we're going to table this because of the different properties, and I think that's great. And I think Mayor Murphy stated that some of these buildings been around for, 25, 30 years, some of them, and something has to be done. I'm looking forward to hearing from the Historical Commission on a couple of properties, and I think it's important for the city to try to move and get a package together of some of the buildings that have to come down. We've seen what's happened, in years past in Maple Street and Maple and Jackson and here on High Street just a couple years ago, and then down the other end, how the building actually collapsed. So, safety reasons, I think it's important to take a look at a couple of these buildings that are ready to crumble and try to take care of them. So I'm looking forward to hearing from the Historical Commission on their thoughts on what they can do with a couple buildings they maybe like to see if they could save. So thank you.
With that in mind, to the members of the committee, I suggest we open it up. I'm looking at the attendance. I think there's a number of the members of the Historic Commission who are present this evening, and I know the letter was signed off by the chair. I'm not sure if the chair is with us this evening. I believe may have had some difficulty with zooming in from where he is. But with that in mind, I would suggest that we suspend the rules and allow a conversation.
Second.
Motion made and second to suspend the rules to allow a conversation with the Historic Commission. To everybody who's present, if there is one person that wants to lead off as a spokesperson, that might make sense here. But we thank you, each of you, for the work you do on the Historic Commission, for what you stand for. We know your intentions and everything you do are for the preservation of some of the most beautiful historical architecture within the Pioneer Valley itself, and that's here in the city of Holyoke. I'm very proud to say, not that it makes a difference these days, but I was the actually alderman, now city councilor, who sponsored the original demolition delay ordinance, because this problem property group, which I'm not too sure what we call it, Mayor Murphy, these days, was established under a different name back in the 80s. But I think the demolition delay is important, and it's something that we've adhered by ever since it was adopted by the full city council. So with that in mind, may I ask for a spokesperson or anyone to raise their hand and let Jeff and Scott get you into this meeting to be able to talk to us?
Francis got her hand raised.
We would recognize
Francis Wilson.
Francis Wilson.
First, I want to convey an apology from Rich Alstrom, who had planned to be here but is out of town, and the internet access he thought was going to be available is not. So that's why he couldn't be here. I don't want to read the entire letter. I just want to make a few points. First of all, we understand that there are properties that need to be demolished. And of the two of the properties, the Pine Street and the High Street, both came before the commission for demolition delay hearings, and the delays were not put into effect. I mean, we recognize those properties had to come down and allowed that to happen. The other properties all fall within the more than 100-year-old guidelines of the ordinance, and cannot be demolished. If a demolition request is made, they have to go to public hearing by the commission to determine whether they can be demolished. So I'm going to just make some main points. It's unclear how the decisions about these buildings were made, why the demolition is beneficial to the city, or if any efforts have been made to repurpose these properties. I do want to say that several times over the past number of years, the Historical Commission has requested to be a part of the problem properties group. And we've always been told, well, that's just a group of people who are city employees, and therefore you can't be on it. We really want to work with the city, with the problem properties group, to determine the best ways, yes, to do historic preservation, but not to save buildings that aren't really salvageable, and to work with all of the appropriate departments to try to save and repurpose properties rather than take them down, and to head things off before it gets to demolition by neglect. It's unclear how much input into this determination that city departments and commissions had. I talked about the demo delay hearings. The Silvio Conti building, the Dwight Street building, was, there was recently a Main Street Corridor historic survey that was done, that was funded by, from a grant from the Mass Historical Society, that documented architectural and historic and history of historic places in South Holyoke and the Flats. And that 345 Dwight Street property was identified as possibly being eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, which would make it eligible for historic tax credits and would be a big incentive for someone to repurpose it. Okay, I talked about that. This original proposal included 7 properties. 2 of them have been taken off the list, so there are now only 5. And the dollar amount has not changed. So we have a question about and where that dollar amount, how that dollar amount was determined. Which is in addition to whether these properties really need to be taken down. The building commissioner does have the right, if a building is eminently dangerous, to do an emergency demolition. And none of these properties fall under that that has not happened with any of these properties. There's also a question. I looked at the Mass General Laws, Part 1, Section 7.1, that this refers to. And that only talks about public buildings. 3 of these 5 buildings are privately owned. And it's unclear, I don't know whether the legal department has been consulted about the legality of using this money that is designated for public land to take down properties that are privately owned. Our recommendation is that we ask that you recommend that the City Council reject the proposal, and that appropriate review by the relevant city departments and commissions starts to determine the most appropriate actions to take in the short term for these specific properties, and then in the long term to better support historic preservation and economic development and avoid demolition by neglect. I mean, Holyoke sees way too much demolition by neglect, and we believe that there are ways to head that off before it reaches that point. I know that there are other members of the commission who are here who would like to speak. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I also want to give them an opportunity to add their comments.
Francis, I do have one question for you. And it's, first of all, thank you. And you did a great job for, if you're filling in for the chair, but I think you're also speaking for yourself.
Yes.
I'd just be curious as to why and who is saying that a member of the Historic Commission cannot be part of this group. This, as stated by Mayor Murphy, by myself, this group and similar groups have existed for probably 30 plus years because of the need to look at buildings that the city acquires. We don't want to acquire them. We require them through tax title often, through failure to pay taxes, and we are forced to acquire them. It's also for, as mentioned, unsafe buildings, and especially ones that might be privately owned, but we try not to get involved with that, but rather force the issue with the owner. But I've sat on this group as a representative of the city council many years ago and attended almost all of their meetings, even though they were late in the day. They did accommodate my schedule. And there is a member of the Historic Commission, is the point I'd like to make, is part of the city. And, you know, maybe you don't want to be called an employee because I'm not even sure if you get a stipend, but I know it doesn't give you anything as far as the hours that you put in. But you are part of the city as commissioners, and you should be allowed, at least one member should be allowed to sit in this group, even as an ex officio, to be part of the discussion, to avoid the redundancy of what they do and then what's presented to us. When it comes to us, it's work that is supposedly been completed. We have questions, but it's about the paying for the work as much as it is anything else. And Mayor Murphy, is pointed that out this evening very correctly. So I just hope that in the future, that in some capacity, a member from your commission can be, part of the discussions, before it gets to this point. I think Mayor Murphy made one good point, and that's the only thing I would add is that the list, and it's a far greater list than just what's in front of us this evening. There are properties that have been on that list. My favorite story is on Maple Street at the corner of Jackson. We got the National Guard to come in and board up that building and preserve it, and to protect it. We tried to put not a new roof, but we patched up the roof that was above it. That 25 years later, building fell into Maple Street and almost killed someone, and that's what we are looking at too from the public safety point of view. But I hope in the future that Mayor Murphy is working until the new mayor is elected in November. I hope in the future the mayor allows a representative from your commission to serve on this committee. But thank you. Are there other questions for Francis?
Thank you.
And is there anyone else from the commission who is with us that wants to speak this evening?
I would like to make a few quick points, if possible.
Paola, we can see you and we can hear you now. Can you just introduce yourself? And I want to say welcome to Ward 3 in my neighborhood.
Yes, no, I love my new house. Thank you. I'm Paula Ferdario, 180 Michigan Avenue. And I am currently vice chair of the Historical Commission. I'm wanted to speak tonight a little bit as, if you may know, I am the real estate agent on the Historical Commission. And one thing that's very important to point out is Holyoke and the real estate market in Holyoke is not what it was 15 years ago. We're a different city. I also wanted to thank my ward councilor, Councilor Bartley, for pointing out the property at 246 Lyman, which will be demolished through Holyoke 1. And that's almost completely different because it's really a little building beyond saving that needs to come down. One thing that I just want to ask, just for protocol, the agenda for tonight is stating that all the way it reads, it leads to understanding that all the property listed are property that belong to the city, and they're not. So if the agenda could be amended and distinguish properties that are private and the one that are not. And I'm bringing that up, not so much for as an historical commissioner, but also I think it's important to enforce as a citizen of Holyoke, the buildings are properly maintained, even if vacant, and that any demolition eventually, we should try everything we can to be at the expenses of the owner. Mr. Mayor, I think, thank you for being so hands-on and doing a great job. And I meant to write you about this before I didn't. I will write you a letter about possibility, but I think the problem in Holyoke has been with marketing. Is not so much that things couldn't sell, but they have not been marketing properly. And I think, unfortunately, I hate to be negative, but the planning department in the past few years for several property has not done a great job at marketing property. So I think before we go on asking for a bond for demolition, I think we should at least give it a go at some very positive, aggressive, video-based property marketing. And the last thing is I have a few questions. I've been doing some research on the bonds, and it's my understanding that the interest rate is very good. But I also understand that whoever will sell the bond to private investors, they have to disclose what the bond is for. And I believe if we take out a bond just to demolish property without a plan to leave more empty lot, I don't know how much confidence that will give to investors. Also because, again, if there are developers that would take on those lots, I think just for sake of disclosure, that would be important to know. But again, a bond to create more of too much that we have might not be the best bond. And also, I would like just point out that the city website says that in terms of rating, we have a AA rating for bonds, but on most sites, economic site, I see that we have a A1 rating. And the very best rating are AAA. So again, we're gonna ask investors to invest in our bond, but if we only have, it's not bad, but it's a A1 rating. It might be the people that invest in bond, they wanna go to municipality, they have AA or AAA. And thank you for your time, and that's all I had to say.
Well, thank you for your time and your work on the Historic Commission. We appreciate that. And I think you have some very good questions. I, for one, would be interested in what properties are not owned by the city, because I think that creates a little bit different, before something is demolished, a little bit different process and problem for the city if it's not, all the proper steps are not taken. But we will find that out if there are any properties here not owned by the city, because that is a big difference. And I appreciate everything you said about the bonding and schedules and ratings and all that. And I can only assure you, but we will put those questions to our bond counsel, to our city treasurer and auditor, because they are always on top of their game when it comes to that. And we certainly will see if we can get some answers to your questions. But is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Christopher
Gothier.
Hi there. Thank you.
Welcome.
I'm not understanding, and maybe it's been said, how the problem properties where city council has decided on these buildings? And I thought it was said something about the year or the delinquency. Just any thoughts?
If I can answer that, Mr.
I want to defer that to Mayor Murphy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, let me just make, the problem property group, primarily through Mr. Cody, but also through the Board of Health and the Fire Department, was asked what properties were deemed the most dangerous and most likely to be in need of demolition. And at that point, without any proposals. So that's how the various properties, and the two previous ones, which were the top two recommended, one appears to have been purchased by someone who's looking to have a cannabis business. The other one is supposedly having someone looking at it, but that hasn't moved, so I'm waiting on that. The other five were then recommended. The actual cost of the bond was the estimated cost of demolition, plus they always have indicated that there should be a 15% inflationary clause, if you will, so that you make sure you cover the entire bond. So all of those buildings, I asked for which buildings were the most dangerous and most likely to need demolition. I had 7 at first. I had 5, and then 2 of them were removed. I asked for 2 or 3 more. They gave me those 2. There was another one that I didn't put on the list. So I'm basically looking at what they're telling me in terms of the problem properties. Some of that we own. Let me also make one point, if I can, and if I'm going beyond, Christopher, forgive me, okay? But, I mean, there are times, and this is where 345 comes in, where is the building now become dangerous for people, whether it's privately owned or not? And if someone is still paying the fines and paying the taxes, but their building is a danger, we have an obligation to make sure that that danger is either removed by that owner, and if we can't do that, then to take action so that it's removed. And that's where that building came into the picture, that there are serious concerns about safety around that building. And knowing that the Hotel Jess is being renovated, I would love to see that building restored if possible. But I think we'll see. I know supposedly I got a proposal coming in the near future, so I would remove that building at that point. But up until that point, the problem property group has recommended that. Fire chief gave me another list of about 15 or 20 buildings that they consider to be extremely dangerous, and that he would not mind some of those going on the list. So all I'm just trying to do is remove buildings that are a danger to the community. If we can restore them and do it in a reasonable time, and I think when I interviewed you, we talked about trying to improve the process so that the historical commission gets the buildings early in the problem property process, not late, not 10 or 15 or 20 years later. If we did that, my speculation is we'd be able to restore a lot more buildings because the cost would be far less and the quality would be far greater, and we wouldn't have safety concerns that were so immense and so detrimental to neighborhoods that we did not need to specifically act at that time. I hope I answered your question.
Christopher, if I could answer the second part of your question with the city council. The city council has not made any final decisions. We are in touch with the problem property group through their group, through the mayor and, Mayor Morris and now Mayor Murphy, as to what their priorities are and what they see as the last go-around. They gave us the 10 most needed, the 10 most properties in need of attention, and not all for demolition, but in desperate need of attention. Monies that are appropriated come in different ways. There's sometimes a line item in the general fund budget that is used for demolition. Typically that's under the building commissioner, and typically that's for emergency demolition. But there are also block grant monies that are used for demolition of properties. That is controlled by the mayor, Elisa Zoller, who was with us this evening, controlled by federal dollars that come into the city. all these properties, my understanding for demolition, because again, the demolition delay ordinance, once a decision has been made, those properties go to the Historic Commission if they have not already gone through the channels of demolition delay. The only time that can be circumvented is when an emergency is the reason for the demolition of property, and that's with public safety being at risk. So this, in this particular group, the reason it's before this committee and then the properties accordingly are attached to the bond request. This is about, if we're going to agree to allow the city to borrow, and the city has to tell us what exactly they're looking to do with the money they're going to borrow. It sounds like in a few minutes we're going to table this because there's already modifications and changes to some of these properties, and there's been some good points brought up by the Historic Commission, which we will take into consideration, and at a future date have a meeting to look at, or maybe perhaps a modified list from the mayor to look at. But I hope that answers both your questions now, but it's,
Yes.
no final decision has been made.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? I have trouble seeing the hands this far away, but
Francis got a hand up. We're gonna-
Francis, did you want to come back in? Thank you, Chris.
I just wanted to, I can answer the question about property ownership. Two of the properties, the Pine Street and the High Street properties, are owned by the city. The other three, the Newton Street, Dwight Street, and Lyman Street, are privately owned.
Thank you, Francis. Anyone else or any further discussion?
Yep.
Counselor Barley, what's that? Sorry.
Counselor Sullivan first.
Counselor Sullivan.
Thanks. Just to address a couple of things that Francis said and Mr. Gauthier also. As far as the point of demo by neglect, that's historically been just a huge problem in the city, and the real answer to that is stricter and more stringent code enforcement going forward. There's nothing we can do about what hasn't happened in the past. And as far as historic tax credits, I understand exactly where you're coming from on that. The problem with it is some of the buildings, and we have to pick and choose, but they've deteriorated so far. We've seen how long it takes to amass these historic tax credits. The Victory Theater is a great example of that. We're all in favor of saving it, but we've been waiting, I believe, 20 years to assemble enough historic tax credits to do the job. And some of these buildings just won't wait long enough for that. And the third point I'd like to make is a lot of the investors that we're seeing, especially in the cannabis industry, they come in, and some of these buildings, they're deteriorated. They're not, these people are not architects. They're not property managers. They're looking to have a cannabis business, and not necessarily that, some other businesses as well. And the price of some of these buildings, I mean, they've been able to acquire them through city auctions. The city's tried everything in its powers over the years to attract people. And they can come in and buy a building for $5,000, $10,000, sometimes $1. And that's a great deal, and they're able to scrape that kind of money together. But at that point, they're financially incapable of carrying out their plans. And they get into it, and they find out how much it's really going to cost to save some of these buildings. And that's what the problem is, and we have to be aware of that as we go forward also.
I see a hand up from Alana Aubrey.
Hi. Hi. I'm probably one of the newer members on the Historic Commission. I've been a resident of Holyoke for 5 years now. I really appreciate the depth of knowledge and the feedback that we're getting. I really appreciate the specific details that folks on the City Council are providing us with. I think mostly we're really here to drive home the point of procedure. We understand and we sympathize quite a bit with a lot of the points that are being made tonight. However, clearly there is a process that's written within the charter, whatever it's called, to utilize and present these properties to the Historic Commission before any determination is actually made. So ultimately, it may end up being that this is more of an ordinance issue in terms of, really looking at the deadline. If a building is sitting under this level, this piece of, determination, it's been through all the different committees, and everything has gone as it's supposed to, and then another 20 years goes by, there should be something written into, law within the city that determines, what are the steps that need to be taken at that point. Is there a cutoff time frame for that sort of thing to occur? And we're really just wanting to make sure that all the voices are heard as part of this process. And clearly, Francis pointed out that I think you said, Francis, all the buildings that were put on this list are over 100 years old. And so that automatically kicks in our involvement, and yet nobody has presented any of these buildings to the Historic Commission. So that's my 2 cents, and again, I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Well appreciated. Councilor Bartley?
Yeah, just, not a point of order. I made a point of order. So I think this is why I recommend, Joe, that we move to receive number 5, B, that we give 4 leave to withdraw or just say complied with, I don't care how you do it, and send it back to the mayor, because the mayor wants to, this is an official order. We can't amend this thing. Only the mayor can amend it, right? So I think we just need to ship it back to the mayor as complied with. And then C, I think this committee should probably just do a late file order for tomorrow night to say to whomever that we recommend that a member of the historic board serve either as a member or as an ex officio member of the group whose name we can't think of, the problem property group.
Preservation group. Yeah.
Those are my 3.
That's great.
Those are my 3 motions for
I keep wanting to say the new name is the Problem Preservation Group, but that
It's-
doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's a preservation group or something. It's preservation for sure.
It's a
but-
positive name.
Yeah, positive.
Yeah.
That's
I thought you referred to it as the safe properties.
State property group. Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, we're not off by much, but
Mayor Murphy,
Yes, sir?
would that make sense to Councilor Bartley's suggestion?
I'd be fine with that.
Okay. So why don't we vote on each of these separate? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? I see none. None, okay. And anybody else on the committee?
Counselor McGivern, can you hear me?
Councilor Lisi.
Thank you. I'm having trouble locating the raise hand button on my phone. I just wanted to make one comment, if I may. I totally agree with the idea of having somebody from the Historic Commission as a part of the property preservation group. However, I think that some of the points that the members raised tonight about having really like the authority over buildings that are, in this case, 100 years old or more, means that any sort of group of properties that you'd want to put out to bond for demolition needs to get forwarded to that body as part of the formal process. So the way that the ordinance is written now, that is part of what would be required in order to approve the bonding for a package of properties that would be considered for demolition. Thank you.
If I could just respond to that, Councilor Lisi, because it's a good point, I understand it. But again, approving the bonding isn't overshadowing the demolition delay ordinance or the process of how this should play out. And I'm sure the members of the preservation group, understands this. I know Mayor Murphy understands it. And there's no question that whether it's a 100-year-old property or just a property less than 100 years old, demolition delay is always, part of the process with the Historic Commission. And 2 of these properties, we've already been told, has been before the Historic Commission. So I agree, and at the same time, do want to point out that, I think there's, maybe some tweaking, and I believe at one point we did put the demolition ordinance in your committee to talk about tweaking it, and maybe we got to look at it again to make sure we got the correct language. But the process to demolish is still in place. Just because we vote on a bond we can vote on a bond, at any point if we agree with the appropriation. That doesn't mean that the treasurer and/or mayor can do anything until everything is signed off by appropriate. And in this case, the Historic Commission is part of that process. I hope that answers your good point, but it just takes it a step further.
Just on the motion?
On item 4,
I did get my hand up this time, but I want to just respond to one last point there.
Councilor Lisi?
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think the point that I want to drive home here is that because, as far as I understand, once we put a package together for bonding, for example, the entire package has to be acted on. We can't really amend it. And so I do think that approving a package, a bonding package for the purposes of demolition is somewhat putting the cart before the horse, where really we should have the package approved by the Historic Commission, and then we would go out to bond for it. Because again, it should be an intact package, and that package should not be able to be amended along the way. And we should be using and applying the full set of bonding that we receive.
Thank you. And with that in mind, Councilor Bartley's motion is that on item number 4, and I'm going to ask that the motion be that we deny item number 4, recommend that it be denied. The reason I point out is a bond is a form of an appropriation, and we've been given legal opinions in the past that we have to vote
All right, so
any of
moved.
these things up or down. So
I'll
the motion
second
is
that.
made and seconded that on item number 4, for all the reasons we heard this evening, be denied, and we look forward to Mayor Murphy putting a modified bond request in front of us. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The recommendation is to deny. Item number 5, Councilor Bartley made a motion that we receive. Do we want to keep it for future reference?
Sure.
Okay, we'll receive and keep it in our file for future reference from the communication from the Historic Commission, which goes into a lot of detail about what we heard this evening. We also have it in writing. On that motion, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Point of order?
Thank you, everybody. Councilor Bartley?
Do we want to take up my suggestion that we do a late file for tomorrow?
I go along with that.
Yes, I'd be happy to co-sponsor that.
All right, Mike?
Mike?
Oh, okay, all right, all right. Yeah, I'll type it up and ship it in. Terry? All right, I'll add your name.
Francis, did you have a question?
I didn't have a question. I wanted to say thank you very much. And 2, a sneak preview. The Historic Commission has been working on a revised demolition delay ordinance, which we're calling a preservation ordinance, that will be coming to City Council at some point relatively soon. So we've been thinking about it a lot too, and have been working on it. And I really appreciate your attention and your support.
Thank you. And we
So
appreciate
thank
your
you.
words. Thank you very much.
All right, motion to take 6 off the table, please?
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded to take item 6 off the table. Can I suggest it can be the same discussion for item 7?
Sorry, Joe, you want to do on both?
Please.
6 and
Oh,
7, suspend the rules.
Take 6 and 7?
Motion made and
Second.
seconded to suspend the rules to take 6 and 7 together. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Item 6 is from Alicia Zoller, Administrative Office of Community Development, regarding the American Rescue Plan Act. And item 7 is City Auditor Tanya Dojek Communications regarding the projected revenues loss calculations for the American Rescue Plan Act itself. Off the table for discussion, we have both Tanya and Alicia with us. Ladies, I know I've communicated with both of you. This is just looking for an update on both of these, well, same item, but where we stand, and I think we've learned a lot since these communications came in. Number one, Tanya, you've given the mayor and the city councilor a formula which calculates out to $1.7 million for lost revenue. And Alicia, I know you've been working diligently with your office and with the mayor on how to spend, and as we heard earlier, how to spend the monies with the ARPA funds themselves. If we could just quickly tell us if there's any updates, any changes in the formulas, any changes in the dollar figures, I think that it would satisfy these, and then open it up for question and answers if there are any. I noted at the last meeting that throughout COVID, we've seen a lot of money come through the federal government, through the state, which is traditionally how monies are funneled by the federal government. And we've seen formula changes, deadline changes, people, businesses, non-for-profits who took out PPE loans found out last year that the deadline of June 30th, 2019 quickly changed to December 30th of 2020 in a blink of an eye. And I think I got those dates mixed up a little, but the point I'm making is things change quickly, and we just wanted to make sure that we're up to date on the formulas and deadlines. Ladies, is there anything you'd like to say? Alicia?
I guess I can go ahead and start. We also have Kate Pricer with us in case there's any specific questions on applications as well. So the ARPA proposals have come in. The Office for Community Development made its recommendations. We've been working with our Citizens Advisory Council. We met with them for almost 4 hours last week with Mayor Murphy. We're meeting with them again this Wednesday. So their recommendations will be coming to you all very shortly. We did meet with DGR. DGR was hesitant to make recommendations until they saw the CAC recommendations, although they did suggest forwarding the 1.7 million in municipal lost revenue to the City Council for consideration. We continue to go through the proposals, make sure that the expenses that are proposed are eligible. We've had a public hearing, as you know, with over 75 folks in attendance. The mayor has received probably at this point over 100 written public comments. It's been quite an effort of outreach and an amazing community response. The mayor hosted department head meeting this morning to make sure that all the department heads and that internally were working together and collectively to ensure that there's no proposal left behind, and that the proposals that do get funded will certainly forward the initiatives across all departments. The question regarding demolition that came up earlier while I was waiting, we did check. We did a Google search of the interim rule, and demolition is noted in the interim rule, but it's noted in as a possible question that the Treasury Department is looking at. It was on page 45 at question 9, and they mentioned whether or not demolition and, sorry, I'm in my office and there's traffic on my street. They mentioned that demolition and blighted properties may very well be considered public health, but it's something they're looking at. So guidance continues to come. We do have a number of projects that we're absolutely confident are eligible and looking to move those forward. The other thing that we're working on, and Kate had sent an email out this afternoon to Sean and the Board of Health, is we think that there's a number of proposals on the ARPA list that are also eligible for CARES Act funding. And so to ensure that we're maximizing the federal COVID dollars, we're looking to fill some of these proposals with CARES Act funding to make sure that we're getting as much money out the door into the community as possible. I think that's about it. So far, I think the process in adopting the community development block grant process has worked really well. It's ensured a transparent process that seems to meet all of the Treasury requirements around community involvement, transparency, ensuring that all sectors of the community have a voice and are involved. We've seen folks commenting and coming out and talking to us about what's going on with these ARPA funds that we would never have previously seen. So I feel like we really are hitting all of the sectors of the community, and so far it's been a positive experience. I don't know if Kate or Tanya have anything else.
Alicia, if I could just, before I ask Tanya, thank you, and by no means was placing this on the agenda trying to be redundant or or overlap the good work done in DGR, which is far more suited. They do a great job in that committee under Councilor Bartley's direction to work with the individual projects, and what your office does in an incredible amount of work, as I know, and we certainly are glad that you got Kate working with you now, because we haven't seen money like this for these purposes since the block grant was truly a federal revenue sharing program. And it's nice to see, unfortunately why, but it's nice to see these dollars come back in through the federal government. The purpose of both these orders is the second part. And you know how I feel about lost revenue. And if that formula changes, I just want to make sure we have some money still there if the formula allows us to increase any lost revenue recovery process. So now we can turn it over to Tanya and then open it up for questions. Tanya, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
So is the
So
formula?
as far as the calculation,
Go ahead,
can
sorry.
you hear me?
Yep.
No, that's okay. The calculation of the lost revenue has not changed, so that number still remains at the $1.7 million. However, today I did have Jeffrey forward some more guidance from the Division of Local Services, Bulletin 2021-6 and 2021-7. I know there's been a lot of questions on how we are going to get that lost revenue into the general fund, or how do we transfer it into the general fund. And Bulletin 2021-6 actually has explicit guidelines of how we would do that. One way we could do it is to transfer cash directly from the grant fund into the general fund, which would actually just increase our fund balance. Another way would be to offset the legislative appropriations, which is, I think, what we're looking to do, which would be to actually transfer it into specific lines and then include the revenue as a non-municipal revenue and a miscellaneous non-recurring line item on the tax recap, which will decrease our deficit. Another thing they did say that we could do, I don't know if this is something we're interested in, is to take this money and transfer it into a capital project fund if we wanted to use it for any of our capital projects that are currently in process. And that's really all the update that I have for the lost revenue.
Well, thank you, because that's important for us to know, and I'm sure Mayor Murphy is on top of that, and I think the formula hasn't changed. We're certainly going in the right direction. Is there any questions or comments? Councilor Bartley.
Yeah, just a comment. I guess to her points, to the city auditor's points, I certainly would want to get a recommendation from the acting mayor as to how he envisions the use of the fund, whether it's for capital projects or for debt reduction, or however it is. Some kind of a communication from the mayor is how he envisions it for the period of time that he's in office, and we'll proceed accordingly. Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor Murphy?
Yeah. My expectation is, and my hope is that this 1.7 million is used to make sure we get closer and closer to a balanced budget for this fiscal year, and do not have to cut other services as we do that. So that would be my first goal. But let me also, first of all, the Citizens Advisory Council met for a good 3.5, 4 hours the other night. I know they're meeting again on Wednesday night, and I know DGR met for about 2.5, 3 hours the other day. So we've made progress. I want to let you know a few things, and I'll be announcing it at the full council tomorrow. But because I keep having public wanting to know more and more about what's going on in the proposals, what I am doing, I'm providing each proposer 15 minutes where we will be, it'll be myself and them, and they will have 15 minutes to present the pros and cons of their proposal, who they expect to have positive impact with, and so that's going to be live on Channel 15 this Wednesday, 11:30 to 1:30, and 2 to 4, and Thursday, same time, 11:30 to 1:30, 2 to 4. And then Holyoke Media will also present all those presentations on Saturday from 9 to 5 and Sunday from 11 to 7. So the public, anyone in the public that wants to get a better understanding of the proposals, each proposer is being invited to get their 15 minutes, and I've asked them to state what their priorities are, specifically who their proposal will benefit, and also if the proposal was cut, how much it could be cut, and they would still be in a position to provide significant improvements, significant benefits to the community. And I also want to thank Alicia and Kate and others and John because, if we can find other revenues to do some of these things, then that leaves us more ARPA money to do other things. And the goal here, just like it was with community development in June, is to try to find out how we get the maximum benefit to the community. And that's exactly what I'm going to try to do. And I also expect that we are going to leave, or I will recommend that we leave some money available for unforeseen circumstances out of this money. So, but I also believe it's important that when we know we've got things that can be done and that they are significantly beneficial to the community, that we get moving on those and get them done.
Thank you, Mayor Murphy. Just not in response, but just so you know where my opinion would be is on the lost revenue of $1.7 million. Eventually, a proposal has to come to the city council for subject to appropriation vote, as in the case of any appropriation. But I do appreciate the auditor finding out the options of how that proposal could come to us, and I do appreciate Councilor Bartley and your response to Councilor Bartley's question, because I think we do need to be informed and ready for whatever our job is in terms of appropriation. And for the rest of it, the DGR is doing a great job, and I look forward to tomorrow night of their presentation, and I look forward to the future CAC findings. I haven't seen that yet, but where we stand with the rest of the money, because I know it's money that can be well spent, and certainly the proposals are worthy of the review. Is there any other questions for our two guests? Any other comments, or perhaps both orders are complied with?
Councilor Bacon has a.
Councilor Bacon? Linda, you're on mute.
Thank you. I just want to thank Mayor Murphy and Alicia for carrying out this process in such an open and transparent manner and encouraging the engagement of our community. I think it can go a long way to increase engagement and also just the overall participation. And I think it's a wonderful thing, and I commend both of you.
Thank you.
Well said. Councilor Dahlman?
I'm all set. Thank you.
And Chair would maybe entertain a motion both orders are complied with?
Motion 6 and
Motion
7 to
second,
comply with?
Both orders are complied with. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Motion to take it off the table.
Thank you. Last item, item number 8, introduced by Councilor Lisi. This is an order that the mayor consider establishing a capital stabilization fund, potentially with one-time expenditures from our presently healthy emergency stabilization fund. Off the table for discussion. All those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? So moved. We do have the maker of the order with us this evening, Councilor Lisi. Welcome again. Would you like to open up with some comments about this request?
Yes, thank you so much. I think last time we took this up, we were exploring 3 different ways that we could establish a capital stabilization fund, one of which was the direct transfer that I noted in the order. And Acting Mayor Murphy decided that he would take on the task of working with bond counsel to figure out if there was a preferred method for doing so. And it seems that making this one-time transfer is something that bond counsel, says is favorable towards. I would defer at this point, however, to ask Acting Mayor Murphy to fill in the details here to see if there's a recommended amount and if there's any particular timing that bond counsel is recommending.
Mayor Murphy?
Thank you. there's not a specific amount. What we've talked about is the ability to take stabilization fund and create a specific function or a specific, I'm drawing a blank here in terms of specific use fund, which in this case would be a capital stabilization fund out of that. There were two suggestions. One was, it would be a transfer out of that, obviously, to establish it, but then that would be something that you would use the interest to continue it, and the other option was when you get to free cash, that you would be in a position to use some of the free cash to also potentially supplement that. But I have not had any specific amount. It was just a question in terms of what it can be done. So, I mean, if there's a specific amount that is that the council would like to request, I can certainly ask bond counsel what if that amount would work in terms of both maintaining our bond rating, but also putting us in a position where we would not have to go out to bond as much for capital improvements. I hope that answers your question.
Council Lisi?
Yes, it does answer my question. Yeah, I think at this point, now that we know that it can be done, it makes sense to move forward. I feel like I am not in a position to, arbitrarily pick a number. One of the numbers that comes to mind would potentially be, the interest on our emergency stabilization account for perhaps the past year, like that. But I think really getting some more, insight as to what a good amount to seed the capital stabilization fund with is a good idea. And it may require, looking more closely at I believe that there is a capital stabilization plan. So what would be like the first year needs for that capital stabilization plan, and how can we seed that fund with enough money to cover those expenses? And once we figure out what that number is, I think Acting Mayor Murphy said it well in that we would want to make sure that that number does not have a negative impact on our bond rating as we make that transfer. So I think that those are two good starting places in terms of the actual number. One would be either the interest on the emergency stabilization fund for the past year, or looking to the capital stabilization plan, seeding the fund with the first year's needs, and with the expectation that that's not going to negatively impact the bond rating.
Thank you. Councilor Bartley?
Well, Linda had her hand up first, but I'll follow Linda.
Councilor Bacon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to make a couple comments relative to this. I think I filed an order around debt management a couple of years ago, trying to accomplish some constraints and accountability relative to this matter. And I was very encouraged to hear one of the options with the ARPA money being that we could transfer some of it into a capital project fund. And so I'm hopeful and encouraging Mayor Murphy that if there is money that can be brought to bear in that regard, once the budget is balanced, that would be an excellent way to seed capital or account or whatever you want to name that stabilization account, because I think they're for the same purpose. Rather than taking money out of the stabilization fund that we've not been adding to except by the interest that it's accruing, I think we need to bring our fiscal house in order and exert a little constraint on the spending side, since we're spending all the way up to the max, and take some of the free cash and put that into the account, because really all we're doing is moving money and putting it in a different account without really changing the amount of the money. And I think if we dedicate some of our free cash, then we're really making an operating decision in an affirmative way, which I think would be helpful to the long-term health of our community fiscally. So thank you for consideration of my points of view on that, and I look forward to further discussion.
Counselor Bartley?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So I think most of us agree that we should have a capital account. So that's, well, hopefully we all stipulate to that. Second of all, I just through the chair to Tanya, if you would send another communication, I'm sorry to be a thorn in your side tonight, just specifying exactly what our stabilization balance currently is. And also, if you could tell us exactly, because I think we heard a member of the Historic Commission sound like there's a little discrepancy between what's posted to the website and what's posted to other sites relative to our bond rating. And then if you're going to send us a bond rating, if you could put that into some sort of context for us. I mean, you know, we have former mayors saying, "Oh, look at our bond rating is A." Okay, I mean, good for you to pull the wool over everybody's eyes, but when we all know that that's a joke, we all know that. So Tanya, A, what's the balance? B, what was our ROI for last fiscal year on the balance? C, what is the bond rating right now? And D, put that into some kind of a context as what that means. Compare Holyoke to, I don't know, Chicopee, Pittsfield, and Westfield. Those are probably kind of similar type cities, if you would. And then just to, sorry, Tanya, go ahead. I apologize.
She can do that.
Nope, I can do that.
Oh,
And
okay.
actually, the bond rating itself, documentation has exactly what that rating means on it.
Yeah, and just put into context, if you would. Thank you, Tanya. Sorry to be a pain in your toe.
Nope, no problem.
And then I, in light of what we just heard, in light of the $30 million thereabouts coming into the city of Holyoke, I would be very hesitant to take any funds from stabilization account to establish this, but I'd be very excited to use free cash, because I'm, Joe, maybe for the first time in 4 years, Pete, we actually might have free cash, a positive free cash. Right. I think that's something where the acting mayor or the new mayor coming in, however that's done, he or she can really make some long-term impacts by taking the funds from free cash, putting a portion to stabilization, and then a portion into setting up a capital account for the future of the city, and use that stabilization account that Joe and Pete and others, Kevin set up, so many 20, 25 years ago. Use that as a continued crutch to keep the city moving forward. That's why I think our bond rating is pretty. Our interest rate is pretty decent because of that. They see the the $15-16 million we have sitting there, and and I think that's the last number we had. It was somewhere around that amount, and it seems like that's sort of keeping the city afloat. We can borrow funds. I agree with Terry and others that if we can use our own funds, but man, if you're borrowing funds at 1.5% or 2%, that's very attractive rates, and you can kick the can down the road and use current dollars to take care of current needs, and that borrow funds to build up the infrastructure. So that's all. It's a good order. I've got no problem with the words. I just think that the funding source, to my colleagues here on the board, I think the funding source should not be stabilization for now, in light of all that we said and heard tonight, and in DGR and et cetera. Thank you.
Counselor Tomlin?
Yeah, thank you. I'm totally agreeing with Counselor Bartley. David, don't agree too much, do we, together? But you said everything I basically wanted to say tonight. I think it's a great order from Counselor Lisi. It's how we're going to utilize it, how we're going to put the money there. We definitely need a fund, for our, expenditures that, the capital improvement, I mean, we've had that years ago. We'd had a capital fund 5 years out, and we'd have money in to take care of things. And now we're purchasing things as they break down, basically, in big ticket items. So I think it's a great idea. I'm not crazy about taking it out of the stabilization fund either. I think in the number of years that, we've funded that money, just the interest on it has grown over the years, and not really putting anything in there. So it's basically how we're going to start this fund up. And I think the ARPA money, if there's a possibility of having something go in there from the ARPA money that is allowed. I know Mayor Murphy stated that we can possibly get some money set aside, and maybe this is the area that could be set aside. And through the the bond council, if it looks that way, is good. And plus, if you take money out of stabilization, if that affects our rating, I think we have a decent bond rating, and I think keeping money in there is important. So whatever we can do to keep that number solid and even increase over the years, I think is valuable for the future of our city.
Could I just make one more comment?
Mayor Murphy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just, and I don't disagree, and you don't want to keep hitting stabilization, but from everything I've gathered from reaching out to bond council, both, depending on what you do with if you were doing stabilization to create a capital account that then reduces the necessity to go out and bond, we haven't necessarily created a worse image for the city in terms of bond council. We potentially could have created a better, because we've actually put that money specifically to take care of some capital expenditures, and we aren't going to go out to bond for them. Maybe we're only going out to bond for the real big ticket items, and we're not, just like we did for the DPW vehicles and all that. That could be part of this, and we wouldn't be going out additionally doing bonds. Ultimately, from what I've heard, and I'm certainly not a bonding expert, but from what I've heard, if we do that, if we were to take capital to eliminate a deficit, if we take out a stabilization to create a capital account and do it with specific purposes, that you can't go out and take it to go out and spend it for other expenses. You're doing it just for capital expenses. You are more than likely not jeopardizing your bond rating, and you might actually be improving it, because you've dealt with issues that you have had to bond for in the past.
Thank you, Mayor Murphy. And just my quick comment, I believe establishing a capital stabilization fund is not just important, but something that we're long overdue from doing, because we talk about capital projects, and it's been going on 15, maybe more years, where we don't even see our capital outlay proposals in the budget, yet alone trying to establish it. And I know it's only August 2nd, but to our auditor that you're with us this evening, it's a little bit early, but I'm going to ask the question, do we know what free cash might be this year?
No, we do not yet. We're still actually closing out fiscal year 2021.
And would you like to take a guess?
I definitely would not.
You listen well, Tanya. I appreciate it, and I'm
Thank
just
you
putting you on the
anyways.
spot.
However, we have agreed to try to make it earlier.
And we appreciate that. We're the last community in Massachusetts that sets our tax rate, let alone finding out what free cash is. But I understand it's way too early, and I'm just putting you on the spot. To the maker of the order, Councilor Easy, I think you've heard everybody's comments. We can do this more than one way. We can keep this in committee. We can say it's complied with. Because of the language, I don't think adopting it exactly the way it is going to happen, but would you like to make a suggestion what you'd like to see happen to your order?
Yes, thank you so much. I wonder if we could have Mayor Murphy talk with our bond counsel about what is an appropriate way to establish this account, and also get some more concrete numbers about, maybe if it comes from one pot of, money and is transferred over from another pot of money, different numbers may make sense. And I would wonder if we could have bond counsel in to explain some of these differences to us. Whenever Cinder's in, she speaks with such ease and clarity around the impact that some of these decisions have, I think that it would be worthwhile to have a full discussion with Cinder at the table. Now that we know it can be done, let's get some specific numbers in front of us and talk about the implications with Cinder. And I think that having her Zoom in is an appropriate way to have her join us without, overburdening her time.
I think the one nice thing about Zoom and hybrid Zoom or whichever way is when you have a bond counsel of such noteworthy stature as Cindy McNary is, be able to Zoom in from Boston and not have to make the 2-hour drive from her home to come see us. And I think that's always, I think she appreciates that. But with that in mind, to members of the committee, what's your thoughts here?
I'll just make a motion it's complied with, and
Make a motion that the orders has been made and second that the order's been complied with, and we can pass on, and we have passed on those suggestions to Mayor Murphy, because he's sitting right here with us.
Yep.
Is that okay, Rebecca?
I'd actually rather it tabled so that we could have Cinder in to talk concretely about whether the transfer is more appropriate from stabilization or coming from somewhere else, and getting some more exact figures. So for me, the preference is tabling it to really get down to the details at this point.
Mayor Murphy?
If I can, just, if you would just adopt it and send it to me, I will then get the information from Cinder and make sure, and then ask her also to come in. But I could potentially get all that information from you before we have, well, probably not before tomorrow's meeting, but before we get into our September meeting. So we'll have her discussion in terms of the appropriate way to establish it, where the transfers might come from, and the pros and cons of each. And I'll ask her all the questions that came up for discussion today, if that's okay. And then I certainly have no problem with trying to get her to come to another meeting, but if you send it out tomorrow and it comes to my office, it obviously puts it right in front of me.
If I can make a little bit, maybe not, I don't want to call it a compromise, but a suggestion on a motion that might satisfy everybody. It's because of the wording of which is fine, but the wording of the request is stabilization money be used for the capital stabilization fund. If we make a motion that would amend that to say that we're in agreement with the establishment of a capital stabilization fund, and that we now ask the mayor with bond counsel to give us numerous types of suggestions of where the funding could come from, and any appropriation, any transfer, any new appropriation has to come back in the form, only the mayor can initiate that in the future to the full city council. That would be our final vote, and at that time, we could ask Senator McNary to come in. Does that make sense?
I'll second that.
Okay, so that's been made and seconded. I think it's a good compromise. Councilor Lisi?
Yeah, so as far as I understand, then it's, we're adopting it with the amended language that you proposed, and on the appropriation, we'll have Cinder in for the discussion.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Thank you so much for that.
Jeff, you okay with that? Okay, I can repeat it if you want. No.
Say it 10 times fast.
That's why I like videos. Thank you, everybody, on that motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion made and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? You don't know what you're talking about? We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Good meeting.
Good night, everybody.